It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelly, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time, and I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney, and join us as we uncover the cultural inspirations and hidden history behind Akira Toriyama's seminal franchise.
And we've almost reached our destination.
Okay, let's hear it.
Hear what?
What are you calling this one?
I don't think I like your tone.
I don't like much of anything we've done for the past 4 years, but I think you can handle not liking my tone.
You'd think so, but you're gonna need to shape up when we get down to the surface of Luton.
Luton?
Yeah, the planet we're going to.
Why Luton?
Why not?
Well, it almost feels like it's named after someone, rather than just a call signal.
Oh no, I wouldn't think that hard about it.
I try to think as little as possible about you or the things that you do, but you keep insisting upon yourself, and yet here we are.
Well, it's definitely not like I keep looking up a list of possible habitable exoplanets and just pulling some at random with minor changes to the names.
A list of what?
Don't worry about it. I said I don't have a list like that.
Can you pay attention? We're on the final approach to, that planet.
And what planet is that?
You know, the one that you just named?
And which name is that?
Luton.
See? It's a great name.
Ugh.
And while we make our final approach, prep for landing, and make ready to disembark, let's get into this week's topic. And this week, we've got 5 more episodes of Dragon Ball Z queued up for you. We're going to be talking about episodes 6 through 10, and that might be the way it goes on Dragon Ball Z discussion around here. Because not a whole lot happens in these 6 episodes.
And yet, they still somehow managed to make 5 episodes out of it.
Exactly.
All right. So, we'll start off with episode 6, titled No Time Like the Present. So let's take stock real quick. Goku, dead. Saiyans, on their way. 1 year to prepare. Oh no, the recaps have invaded my recap. So, how do our heroes prepare? Well, first, Bulma steals that sweet alien tech attached to Raditz's face. Piccolo regrows his arm, then decides to become the world's best adoptive dad. Goku finds himself in the worst place he could possibly conceive of, the bureaucracy of the afterlife. Kami and Goku have a quick meet and greet with King Yemma, and Goku asks if Yemma can train him since he was strong enough to force Raditz to go to hell. Instead, Kami puts him on the path to train under a mysterious Kaio-sama. Well, it's more like a road, really. A snake road. It's a literal snake road on the clouds. And at the end of this is the home of Kaio-sama, who Goku must train with if Earth has a hope of beating the Saiyans. Back on Earth, Krillin is in for a beating of his own. He's about to deliver the bad news to Chi-Chi, who I'm assuming they have let, hang out for a day without telling her what's going on. I mean, phones exist in this world, right? Given how her visit with Ox King is going, it's going to be quite the blow-up. Goku arrives at Snake Way, where the attendant drops the lore. It's a 1 million kilometer road with only one being who's ever completed the trip, King Yemma. Okay, well, that's a long trip, but he's got a year. Well, I kind of forgot to mention the drawback. If Goku falls from Snake Way and into the clouds, he will be trapped in hell for eternity. I'm sorry, Hiffle for eternity. Goku seems unperturbed by this information. He leaves a message for Baba to relay to Roshi, "Don't revive me for 1 year," and sets off on his journey. Starting a journey of his own, Gohan starts his training with Piccolo. This particular school of martial arts is the school of hard truths, but the results are quick and effective. A mountain gets destroyed. Piccolo's theory is confirmed. This kid's going to be a powerhouse, which leads us to episode 7, titled Day 1. So what does training with Piccolo look like? Well, it's an extensive regimen of exercise, subsistence hunting, and child abuse. It's just child abuse. The goal? To teach Gohan how to draw out his power and use it effectively instead of being subjected to his emotional state. Kami, who's doing his divine spy cam thing, pontificates on Piccolo's decision to train Gohan. He reveals to Popo that their lifespan will end when the Saiyans arrive and sees his adopting of Gohan as a change in his character towards good. Back on Earth, Gohan is struggling to survive, and on Snake Road, Goku is already having trouble staying on the path. Speaking of straying from the path, Krillin's trying to deliver the bad news to Chi-Chi, but he keeps lying instead, claiming that everyone has run off to play on a deserted island and that they won't be back until really late. Then Gohan gets chased by a T-Rex. He manages to escape by accidentally teleporting himself on top of a nearby plateau. Hooray! Just one problem. He doesn't know how to get back down. Boo. It's going to be a long, cold night for Gohan, but at least he got lucky and some apples fell down for him to eat with no tree around. Episode 8, Gohan Goes Bananas. It seems everyone has found their path to power, so now we get a Rocky-esque training montage, right? No, we get a disgruntled Chi-Chi who's still under the impression that Goku and Gohan are off goofing around. Krillin, ever the coward, flees the scene and heads back to Kami House. What's worse is nobody really seems all that bothered to tell her the truth. Fortunately, Chi-Chi's going to rectify this because she's already headed on her way to Kami House as we speak. In the meantime, Bulma figures out how to get the scouter to display info in Earth language, and Yajirobe stops by to invite Krillin, Yamcha, Tien, and Chaozu to train with Kami and leave Goku's message from the afterlife. You know, the whole "don't revive me for a year" thing. His timing couldn't be any more perfect, though, as who would arrive soon after he leaves? A righteously angry Chi-Chi, of course. She finally gets the truth, and I fully understand why she hates Goku's friends. Meanwhile, Gohan is having another fun-filled day in his plateau child prison. A friendly rodent decides to show him the way down, but he decides to put it off until starvation outweighs his fear of falling. He turns in early to rest up when a late-night potty break has the moon hit his eye like a big ape surprise. Gohan goes absolutely ape-slip. Luckily, Piccolo figures out that the moon is the source of the problem and pulls a Jackie Chun. He then removes Gohan's tail to be extra safe. Piccolo leaves Gohan with his dignity by giving him some spiffy new duds and a sword, which is an interesting power that is probably, I don't think it's ever revisited again, but forget about that. Don't worry about it. We're moving on to episode 9, titled The Strangest Robot. So his first morning off the plateau is a little rough for Gohan. It would seem that being trapped at the top of that stone pillar was the safest place in the wilderness for him. He gets chased by an alligator, or is it a crocodile? I can never remember the difference.
Oh, I know how to tell the
mountain
difference.
lion. What's the difference?
One will see you later, and one will see you in a while.
I walked right into that one. Okay. So he gets chased by an alligator, a mountain lion, and a giant eagle, and then he falls into some sort of ancient ruin via sandpit. While down there, he finds a robot and switches it on. Clearly, Gohan is trying to befriend it, but it's a cantankerous old coot and just wants to be left turned off. What follows is this charming little character piece where the boy and the robot reluctantly grow a friendship, and the robot tries to talk the kid into jumping off a cliff. When the kid decides not to jump, the robot throws him instead. This results in the robot being crushed, but somehow Gohan is still devastated over the guy that just threw him off a cliff. Episode 10 is titled A New Friend. It would appear some time has passed as our boy Gohan is now proficient at surviving in the wilderness, but something seems to have an eye on him. Back in civilization, Yamcha's making a mint off having superhuman strength. He's getting paid to hit home runs for a pro baseball team. Unfortunately, the tensions between the teams results in a dugout emptying brawl. Krillin shows up mid-fight to pick Yamcha up for Kami's training tour. During the night, Gohan has a visitor that turns out to be a dinosaur. It's been badly injured and it's looking pretty rough. Gohan tends to its wounds and continues to feed the beast in hopes it will improve and Gohan will have a new friend. That is until the T-Rex attacks. Gohan rushes to defend his new friend, sword in hand, but he's still not strong enough to take down this apex predator. Gohan loses a friend, and the universe continues to spin on. A poignant moment ruined by the soundtrack. That is it for our recap.
Pretty dark ending to that episode.
It's a dark ending, but it's like this bouncy, like March music.
Yeah.
It just totally undercuts the moment that's being shown.
Maybe they felt like they had to do that.
Maybe somebody like one of the showrunners like, yeah, that's a little too depressing for a kid's show. Maybe we try and cheer it up with some music, huh?
It's the Artax of Dragon Ball.
Oh, you triggered my PTSD.
Yamcha getting excited over a fight he can win. To underscore how little happens in some of these episodes, I always, not always, but I often am kind of glancing through the episode summaries just to also kind of remind myself, because I have a hard time like remembering.
I mean, it's 5 episodes at a crack. It's hard to remember specifically what episode a specific thing happens in sometimes.
Exactly. The summaries for like episodes 9 and 10 are so short. The one for episode 9 is 3 paragraphs, and one of the paragraphs is a sentence. So there's some good stuff in here. Like Gohan going Uzaru is pretty cool.
Yep.
And I like all the stuff with Piccolo. I like all the Piccolo character building that's going on here. From just the way he interacts with Krillin and the crew, and being like, I'm taking the kid. Like,
like there's no discussion here. I'm going to do what I want.
And just the growth of his character and the changes in his character that you see even here. I like it all. I think that's all good stuff.
I think he's also got this really nice, it's like an internal monologue moment where he's thinking to himself, like, oh my God, this kid is so strong. If I train him, he very well could be the hero that kills me.
Right, yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting way for him to look at that.
I also think, what a flex, giving him the same outfit as his dad, but putting his demon symbol on it.
The disrespect.
That's a flex. I like that. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
That'd be like giving someone in Star Wars like Luke's X-Wing outfit, but putting an Imperial logo instead of a Rebel logo on the helmet.
Ooh. Yeah, it's about equivalent, I would say.
I like it. So we're going to talk a lot about King Yemma in this episode, because we found a lot of really interesting stuff on King Yemma, and there's not a lot of times that this is a super, super important character in the show. In fact, I'd say like this is one of his 2 most important character moments in the show. The other one being when he lets Vegeta keep his body. That's
okay. Like
300 episodes from now. But his introduction to this and to the afterlife, and the starts like the real glimpses of Toriyama's afterlife this is one of the times where Yemma is the most important.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start off with the Yemma lock, as is mentioned in the first appearance of King Yemma. He talks about how he mentioned like he didn't have to put the Yemma lock on Raditz, but he could have, or something like that.
I thought it was more along the lines like he used the Yemma lock, and then Raditz didn't have a choice other than to do what he wanted, or something like that.
It might have been that. So the Yemma lock, the move is never ever performed or seen, or even really talked about too much, except in passing. But the motion that Yemma displays when talking about it is somewhat similar to a headlock. And I like to think that this is yet another wrestling reference in Dragon Ball, and I think the Yemma lock is a reference to the hold known as the full Nelson, which you mentioned in the our previous episode's recap. pretty much everyone who's watched some wrestling knows this move, the full Nelson, where you lock your hands behind your opponent's neck while your arms are scooped under their arms. In real life, this move is actually extremely dangerous and has been outright banned in most levels of real competition as damaging to the spine and potentially acutely life-threatening. So when you're performing this in like Greco-Roman wrestling, it is outright banned, or at most it is sometimes allowed to be used as a transitional move, but you are not allowed to hold opponents in this spot because you can break their neck. But in WWE style wrestling, it's used as a sleeper or submission maneuver and was popularized by a couple people that Toriyama might have seen if he was watching wrestlings during the times we've thus far presumed he was. The rise of Andre the Giant, and we talked about, I think, in one episode, Dick the Destroyer Bayer, and was he the guy who, was it Dick the Destroyer Bayer? No, it was someone else, I think, who like had their biggest match in Japan and then died like 10 days later.
I think because we did talk about that. I think that was Bayer. I could be wrong.
But yeah, that's Toriyama was watching wrestling in the, late 70s and early 80s. So to name a few of these guys, there was Ruffy Silverstein, from the era of wrestling being considered actually legitimately competitive, and he was the WLW television champion in 1951 and 1952, and he had a more Olympic style to his wrestling that has obviously faded away almost entirely from televised pro wrestling over the years. This was the first guy really to use the full Nelson was Ruffy Silverstein. Mm-hmm. There was also Hans Mortier, who used the full Nelson as a finisher and became a popular enough heel, or bad guy, to have had multiple main event feuds against WWF champion Bruno Sammartino. If you're not in the know on wrestling, Sammartino in the 60s was like Hulk Hogan. Sammartino Mania or Sammartino like fandom was like Hulkamania on steroids in terms of popularity. He was the guy in an era where wrestling was mostly a traveling road show and still largely seen as not being scripted. In the more scripted era, Toriyama may have seen both the Warlord, who was a member of the Powers of Pain. They were the heel counterparts to the Road Warriors or Legion of Doom in the late 80s. And also, possibly, I would say most famously, and I would think where Toriyama probably would have seen this, like most likely, Superstar Billy Graham was WWF champion from 1977 to 1978, and he used a full Nelson as his finisher. It's most likely a nod to Superstar Billy Graham.
Quite the pedigree on a move that we never even see.
Well, and hey, we do get to see a full Nelson in this, so
that is true.
It was used on Raditz. So now, King Yemma is very similar to Enma, a character who appears in Dr. Slump when Senbei Norimaki dies after being hit with a coconut. And in fact, King Yemma in Japan, the Dragon Ball character, is named Enma Daio. So they have the same name, the Dr. Slump character and the Dragon Ball character. In this episode, or this I think he appears in the manga also. So when Enma appears in Dr. Slump, Arale throws a pile of poo on him, which angers him, and he sends the group going to rescue Senbei to hell. But unbeknownst to him, certain afterlife servants are actually assisting Arale, and they bring her and Senbei back to the world of the living. King Yemma later appears in a sequel manga called The Brief Return of Dr. Slump, and is seen sentencing Masharito to hell. To which Masharito demands someone bring him back to life with the Dragon Balls so he can avoid this sentence. In both the Japanese and Funimation casts, the voice actor for Yemma is the same as Mr. Satan. Namely, in Japanese, it's Unsho Ishizuka and Chris Rager, or Rager.
So King Yemma, or Enma Daio, is based on the Buddhist mythological being known as Yama, or Great King Yama. He is the king of hell and a wrathful god said to judge the dead and preside over the cycle of reincarnation known as samsara. In not the least bit of confusion here, the Buddhist Yama is based on the Hindu deity Yama, who is also a god of death and justice, responsible for the dispensation of law and punishment of sinners. In Hindu tradition, Yama is often characterized as the first mortal who then chose to die, and while doing so, blazed a pathway to the celestial abodes, thus becoming ruler of the departed. The word Yama actually means twin, and in Hindu culture, Yama has a twin sister, Yami, and in Buddhist culture, Yami is Yama's twin brother, as opposed to sister. Later, Yama came to mean binder and also moral rule or duty. He's also considered Lord of Dharma, the concept of harmoniousness within the natural order. This natural order encompasses duties, rights, laws, conduct, virtues, the right way of living, and is considered to be all things in accord with, is it Urta?
Rata? I have no idea.
The order and custom that make life and the universe possible. There is no direct translation for Dharma into English, and it's a rabbit hole of belief, etymology, and sociopolitical study that could consume hours. Thus, suffice to say, it's a harmoniousness with the quote-unquote correct way to live. There remains some debate on whether the Yama of Hindu culture is or is not the same god as Dharmadeva, the god who personifies Dharma. Yama is often depicted as buffalo-like or as riding a buffalo. In the Rig Veda, Yama is one of the two kings humans see when they reach heaven, the other being Varuna, the god of justice and truth, who in turn is also paired with the god Mithras, the lord of treaties and protector of alliances. In the Rig Veda, Yama is also depicted as a gatherer of the dead, giving them a place to rest. It's through Vedic literature later that Yama becomes more and more associated with some of the negative aspects of death and associated with the beings who end life, Antaka, Mritu, and Niriti. I apologize to anybody if I butchered that. I'm trying my best. In the Katha Upanishad of Hindu culture, Yama is portrayed as a teacher providing boons to Nachiteka, the young boy who is a stand-in for the concept of a soul. He helps provide Nachiteka with an understanding of the nature of being, knowledge, and the soul and liberation. He provides the soul with the knowledge required to lead to heaven. Basically, he's considered like a lawgiver who understands the pathway to heaven, and because he was once mortal, has unveiled those instructions in the form of Dharma to humanity. In the Yaksha Prashna, he tests the character Yudhishthira, and is impressed by his righteousness, leading him to reveal he is his father and brings Yudhishthira's brothers back to life.
Yeah, that's to do with, like, some people consider Yama a fatherly figure. And so the Yama of Hindu mythology is much more benign than that of Buddhist beliefs, and has even been employed in iconography for various safety campaigns in India. The Yama of Buddhism is fearsome and often metes out punishment, admonishing people for their bad karmic deeds. The Buddha states that people who inflict bad karma are taken to Yama, who undertakes an inquisition upon their death. Yama asks if they considered that their conduct was ill in light of the way of the world. If not, and they feel no regret, they will be sent to a brutal hell. So he's basically like, hey, did you even feel bad about what you were doing? Did you know what you were doing was bad? And if they're like, no, no, I felt pretty good about it, then that's a person that's like deserving of going to hell. You know, if you're like, do you even feel bad that you hurt people? Nope. Well, then you're going to hell.
I can understand. That seems like the bare minimum.
Yeah. Yama's depictions in Buddhism vary from enjoying the comforts of heaven and being one of the like revered deities to being punished for his own karmic misdeeds, but his rule as king of hell or the underworld or the afterlife is unquestioned. He is often portrayed as sending death or plagues and calamities out to humans as a warning to behave well. In Chinese culture, Yama is called King Yan, the ruler overseeing the 10 kings of hell, portrayed with a scowling red face, bulging eyes, and long red beard. He wears traditional robes and a judge's cap or crown bearing the character for king. He is depicted as being served by two fearsome guardian guardians, namely Oxhead and Horseface, who bring spirits to him for judgment. Depending on the version of which Chinese mythology or culture you're delving into here, there are either 8 or 10 or 18 courts in Yan's realm. Each is ruled by a king, over which King Yan is the supreme king. And I think that's got something to do, I didn't delve too deep into it, but I think it's got something to do with, like, if you're familiar with Inferno and the concept of the 7 circles of hell, or 8,
Okay.
9, I think they're the 9 circles of hell. Sorry, and each circle is reserved for like a different punishment or a different sin. I think that's like the Chinese courts. You know, each one of those courts is, I think, reserved for a different type of failing of human character.
Okay.
I think. Depicted as a buffalo or riding one, as we mentioned with Yama in Hindu culture, with a red face, wearing a helmet, with a beard, presiding over judgment of the dead, those things are all King Yemma. Toriyama's twist here is that he presents him as wearing a business suit rather than traditional Chinese robes. This is Toriyama's version of what a bureaucratic afterlife looks like, because that is the thing in East Asian culture, is their afterlife is very bureaucratic.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. Like, Sun Wukong gets a title that means like something super, it like translates super impressively, but he's just like a stable boy.
Yeah.
So then he like runs amok in the offices of heaven, and that's when they punish him by sending him under the mountain. Like the afterlife of Buddhism is like just climbing ladders of bureaucracy. In Toriyama's version, everyone is a salaryman. It's not Toriyama's first shot at salarymen, and it won't be his last. And we talked about that. The dude, he worked as one. I
wonder why.
He worked as one, and he hated it. Now, I looked around, and I could not find anyone specifically stating the meaning of the symbol on Yemma's helmet. But if you look up King Yemma and you look at the various wikis, I don't know, whatever Dragon Ball wikis there are, they will often say the character's name as it appears on the page in Japanese.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's kanji, I don't know if it's katakana. I'm sorry, I don't read Japanese. But one of the symbols of his name is the symbol that's on the hat. And my prevailing theory is that it's not, because if you look up the way Yemma's name is written in Japanese, it's 4 characters, which to me means each one of those characters is a syllable, which is Kingu Enma, or maybe Enma Daio, or Daio Enma. I don't 100% know. I'm sorry.
I hope it's the character for Dai, just because that would be really funny.
And I think it's part of the character that spells the Enma portion of the name.
Gotcha.
And so what I think, again, as someone who doesn't speak Japanese, is it would be like if your name was, say, Thomas, just to pull a random one, or Daniel, just to pull a random one.
Yeah, totally random.
And you wore a name tag that said Tom or Dan.
Makes sense.
I think that's what's going on Yemma's hat.
So Yemma put his name tag on his head. Got it.
Yes. I think he wears a hat with his own like nickname on it.
I mean, let's just say that's what it is. Who's going to correct us at this point?
If anyone out there knows differently or better, feel free to reach out and correct us
on this minor detail.
It's so important, though.
Truly, it's the linchpin of the series.
Yemma is also a bit like Minos. As I mentioned, I brought up Inferno earlier. And
Mhm.
somewhat interestingly, though serving a pretty different purpose to Cerberus, the Hellhound, Yama in Hindu culture is sometimes depicted as having a pair of dogs who guide souls to his realm and help keep evil men out of heaven. Briefly on Minos, he was a Greek mythological character who was the king of Crete and son of Zeus and Europa. He foisted the responsibility of sending people to be eaten by the Minotaur onto King Aegis, and after his death became the judge of the dead in the underworld. In Virgil's Aeneid, he is the judge of the dead and determines whether they should go to Elysium or Tartarus. And then as Dante Alighieri greatly revered Virgil, when he wrote Inferno, he brought Minos in as a character who judges which level of hell to send sinners based on the sins they committed. And the number of times he wraps his tail around you is what circle you're going to be flung to.
Oh.
Yemma also serves the role of Saint Peter in more modern Christian philosophy, who sits at the pearly gates and judges whether a soul is worthy of heaven or condemned to hell. And the part where it looks a lot like Yemma in Saint Peter is Saint Peter opens a book of the soul's life. He looks at the book of your life and is like, okay. And that's Yemma is constantly got books and ledgers in front of him. This imagery, the imagery of Peter in front of the pearly gates, was inspired by the description of New Jerusalem in the book of Revelation.
Now that we've got all the religiosity out of the way, a slight change of topic we got here, couple little mishmash of a few things. Gohan's training is basically learning to live like Goku used to live every day of his life. That's pretty much what it boils down to. We have a note here about Nemoria. Without going too deep into a tangent, maybe we'll probably circle back on this at some point. Probably when there's a filler arc or something, or characters coming across a planet that portrays itself as a bygone version of planet Namek that is now something of a lost civilization.
That sounds specific.
No idea when that would ever possibly happen. Nemoria is likely a play on the continent of Lemuria, a fabled landmass proposed by zoologist Philip Sclater in 1864. Sclater claims the continent sank beneath the Indian Ocean, and the legend was later appropriated by occultists. It was named Lemuria because it was crafted as a way to attempt to explain why lemur fossils exist in Madagascar and in India, but not continental Africa or the Middle East. Now, the science of plate tectonics and continental drift dispelled that theory, but there were some interesting parallels to things like Mu and Atlantis that we can touch on someday, should the occasion to discuss lost ancient civilizations arise. Jelly keeps threatening with GT, and the idea of the Sufurians being from a lost and wiped out civilization is played with there, so perhaps if we remember we can talk about it then. The name Nemoria may be a play of some kind on the word sleep in Japanese, which is Neru, which is an acknowledgement of it being a place that is now quiet, where Mr. Robot is eternally slumbering.
Yeah, and these continents, just briefly, were a way for people to explain things like that. Madagascar has lemurs, and India had lemur fossils, and how could those two things be possibly connected? This Sclater was oh, there must have been a giant landmass between Madagascar and India that connected those two, and it sank.
I love old science rabbit holes. They are so interesting.
And that's where a lot of these ancient civilization myths kind of come from, is people attempting to explain something scientific. And we'll look more into it, but you might be how is there just these little islands out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean out there? Oh, what if they were part of some huge landmass that sank down and they're just the top? That's all that's left.
I like that these are for the time, modern scientists that just assume that land masses can just sink. Fantastic.
That's quite a dark world to live in, isn't it?
Oh, a pretty interesting one too, honestly.
Imagine being oh, we're on a large landmass. It could just sink at any time.
Do you think maybe those scientists got angry at oil drillers when they started, because they're no, you're going to put holes in the land and we're going to sink. I guess I have questions now for when I get to the afterlife.
We're all going to eventually sink when we melt the ice caps, but
That's really more. Well, it's not so much sinking as it is
flooding.
Flooding, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. One last note concerning Yamcha in these episodes, because Yamcha's your boy.
That's right.
He plays for the Titans, and if you note the way Titans is spelled, it's Taitans.
Mm-hmm.
That was phonetic for Japanese speakers, as the English spelling of the word in Japanese would likely be pronounced Titans. This I gathered because this is my tokusatsu reference for the episode. There's an Ultraman character named Ultraman Tiga, Tiga, and much later there's an Ultraman sort of counterpart. I think he's actually like in some way connected to Tiga, who's named Taiga, and his is Taiga. So this was Toriyama, or not Toriyama, but rather the anime staff, like assuring that Japanese viewers knew that Yamcha played for the Titans and not the Tetons.
It's awfully considerate of him.
Because, yes. Also, on that note of the anime staff attempting to use, or Toriyama himself actually attempting to use English lettering, if you notice on Yemma's castle, it says welcome. But if you look closely, it seems to be spaced very odd.
Okay.
It's like WEL space COME.
Is he demanding that of me? Is that what's going on?
Toriyama spelled it, and then the anime staff just copied it with 2 L's because they didn't know. Then, like, you know, Funimation or whoever's doing the English, the Americanization is like, that ain't how that's spelled.
They're like, that's probably not going to get past the censors. Should probably fix that. And
they just, like, colored out the word, the extra L. I believe that's retained even in the manga. I think, like, in the manga, it looks like that. It's, like, weirdly spaced like that, too. So there's a fun little note on the use of English. We've talked about that a bunch of times.
So many interesting things that happen because of weird translations.
Like, we talked about that, I think, with launch, right?
Yeah, where in English it's launch, but in Japanese it's actually lunch.
But also, there was like a cover one time. Oh, I can't remember. That like used that like, or it might not have been launch. There was like we talked about one time, you have to go back and listen. I can't at all remember what episode this was, but it might not even have been launch, but there was like where Toriyama, because there's not really the letter V, I think, in Japanese, it's like they even pronounced Vegeta a little bit more like Vegeta. He like assumed that it would be the same thing, or no, he assumed it would be the opposite in English, and so he spelled something like with a V instead of a B or something like that. I can't remember what episode that was when we talked about that, but like there was a thing like that where Toriyama just made, because he didn't actually speak English, he just knew some English characters, and Torishima just thought that those looked cool also.
So they're the equivalent of like the white people that get like Chinese character tattoos and they don't know what it means.
That is like a cultural thing. The use of English characters or text in like Japanese clothing and such as like slogans or things. I have seen
some absolutely hilarious t-shirts with the most vulgar English on them sold in Asia.
That are just like meaningless or vulgar. Oh man.
I probably not
like
a good
went
idea
and looked.
to
I went and looked them up, and
examples.
I went and looked up in one immediately, and I can't even read it. No, I can read it. It's fine. Beauty dies in LSD orgy after sex with 100 men.
Okay. Really stretching the PG-13 rating with that one.
Here's one. Don't choice. Wicked want funny.
Yeah, that's a good example where it's gibberish in English.
Yeah. Or ones that are like close, like I'm pretty sure this should be where the bridges burn, I light the way, but it's way the bridges burn, I fight the way.
That's so close.
So like stuff like that where you can almost see what they're going for.
I'm not really sure where they were going with the LSD one, but
no,
they were going somewhere with it.
They were going somewhere, but so that's like they were just trying to make sure that Japanese viewers would read that. So yeah, King Yemma, I don't know. I never gave him too much thought. I do like the idea that he is presumably quite strong, right? Like quite capable. If he's able to like flick Raditz aside with just a flick of his finger type of thing, essentially. Yeah. And so he's obviously fairly strong. But he just is so consumed by how demanding his job is.
Because he's a salaryman.
Yeah.
I always thought that like this character was a missed opportunity. Like the fact that he's not used as much as he could be in a series where characters die and are revived multiple times.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some missed opportunities there where he could be like complaining about the paperwork for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree actually. Like there's definitely some you could have funny moments with him like seeing people for the third time.
Yeah, and he'd be like, "Oh, back again, huh?"
Yeah.
Or like these guys come and go so often, he's now got like one of those hole punch card systems where like the 10th time you die, you get like an ice cream sundae or something. Like there's a lot of gags that could have been used there, and I'm honestly a little surprised that Toriyama didn't go for it because it seems like something that would be right up his alley.
Maybe he at this point is just leaning so much into the because he knows what sells now.
Or the other half of that could be maybe the editors like no don't worry about that gaggy stuff. Like maybe that was his original intention with Yemma, and then like editorial got involved. Like no more gags. This is a battle manga. Just draw the fights.
I could see this being a character though that like would super fit into a gag manga for sure. I love this idea that like the afterlife is full of salarymen.
And weirdly, it kind of fits, at least in my head, because like, especially now in the modern world, how many people die in any given moment, and not for like nefarious reasons or like horrible accidents, just the natural progression of life,
Mm-hmm.
And it's something like, I think it's like 120 people every second pass away. And that kind of throughput, yeah, you'd probably need some kind of bureaucracy if you wanted to go smoothly.
And then when people blow up whole planets and you get influxes.
Ooh, crunch time. That's like when you work at McDonald's and somebody up front goes, "Oh, a bus just pulled in." It's just the entire kitchen just goes, "Ah."
Yeah, Yemma he's not much of a character in terms of like I don't think anyone has much of an opinion usually on Yemma. And I think I'll mostly echo that just to say I don't dislike him. I don't really like him. I don't have a whole lot about Yemma.
I personally enjoy him. I think he's a fun character, and I wish they would have just used him more, honestly.
Do you think he's the reason why they like toned down the look of the Ox King? Because Ox King gets a redesign around now.
Yeah, that's a good point. We kind of glossed over that. He's kind of just dressed in civilian clothes now and has a hat with some horns on it. And he's still like 8 times bigger than your average person, but yeah, possibly. But when I think about like Ox King's original design, there's still not a lot of overlap with Yemma.
Yeah.
But that's possible. I could see that. I could also see it as maybe his way of showing that Ox King has gotten older and is kind of like in that grandpa role now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's such a fun grandpa. He just wants to like...
Yeah, he just wants to hang out with Gohan and have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, I like... We're going to revisit Chi-Chi eventually, someday.
That poor woman.
But I like that he has this like whole family of idiots. They're all dumb. Like, they're all dumb.
They're a bunch of... They're all a bunch of hicks.
And they... like, Chi-Chi does it a different way, but they all try to like meet Gohan on his level of like I feel like Ox King is like always bringing Gohan like books and stuff. Mm-hmm. He probably doesn't know what these books are. He has no idea, but he's just trying to meet Gohan on his level.
I feel like Ox King actually, of anybody in that family, would be the one to maybe do a little bit of digging into like what is Gohan interested in and finding books about that stuff.
Maybe.
Like, just in my own head, I have nothing to back that up. But just in my own head, I'm just like, he seems like a fun grandpa who's like kind of in tune with his grandson. Like, I think he realizes how Chi-Chi is as a mom, and I think he realizes how Goku is as a dad, and he's just like, I'm just going to try and be here for this little guy as much as I can.
This kid needs someone stable in his life.
And he makes I'm surprised this became such an involved Ox King discussion, but I think he also does a really good job of mediating between Chi-Chi's wants as a parent and Goku's wants as a parent, or I guess lack of wants as a parent.
I agree. Yeah.
Because when you look at Chi-Chi and Goku as parents, like Chi-Chi's very focused on Gohan's education. Goku's much more lackadaisical, and he kind of tries to push the idea of like, hey, let him do some physical stuff too. Like, you can't just exercise your brain and nothing else. Kind of pushing that Roshi philosophy a little bit, like you got to have a sharp mind and a sharp body.
Mm-hmm.
And then even in just the little snippets that we get in these first 10 episodes, Ox King's just kind of like, like, hey, maybe ease up on the studying stuff a little bit. Like, he is just a kid. He should be allowed to have a little bit of fun,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Ox King, great grandpa. We'll put it that way.
There we go. That's everything that we could say, I think, about King Yemma.
About almost every character that has horns in this show, I think.
Yeah, that's every overly large bearded character with horns.
Every bovine themed character. Let's do it that way. I say that, and there's probably some scene in the background with like a Minotaur character that I don't know about, and some fans are going to come out and be like, "You forgot about this guy."
How could you forget about?
Well, I'm going to tell you this right now. None of you people better do that, because if you do, we're going to devote an entire episode to that character.
How could you forget about Prince Cowie?
Listen, I will never, ever in my life forget about President Dog.
Ah, Dog President. King Furry.
King Furry, yes. Which is just such a... Oh, that's such a...
Make the world
great stealth joke. King Furry. Fantastic.
All right. Shall we strike out?
I mean, why?
What do you mean, why?
Well, there aren't any power readings here. Why not just go to the next planet?
We have an obligation, Recruit.
We only have obligations when it's inconvenient for me.
Or our obligations just happen to be inconvenient for you.
I'm kind of thinking it's the former.
Well, you can think that all you want, but it doesn't make it true.
I know, but it helps me deal with this life I now lead.
Do I keep inventing obligations just to inconvenience Bekinney? What new inconveniences will Luton hold for us? Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kid. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.